Welcome to the Therawake Podcast. You are in the right place. I am your host, a qualified therapist, and I will have a number of guests come in to speak to me to share some gems of wisdom to give to you, the listeners. If you like what you see, remember to like, share, and subscribe so that the more people who subscribe to this podcast, then the more we will be able to have some guests in the studio. Remember to click on that notification bell at the bottom. So each time a new episode is uploaded, you'll be notified of it. Hello, and welcome to our guest, who is Abby Osho.
Hello, and it is wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Judy.
Listen, it's long overdue. It's 100% long overdue. We've known each other for some time. Our names have been floating around.
But they have. They've been floating around LinkedIn, and here we are. Yeah.
Here we are, absolutely. And I've got an introduction that I'm going to read out because I think I want to kind of give you justice of all that you are and all that you do. So Abby Osho is a visibility and leadership coach, an author and speaker, an international retreat creator. Abby is celebrating her 10th year in business. That's amazing. That's amazing in itself. This month, which is February 2024. And Abby was recently featured in the award-winning Channel 5 documentary, White Nanny, Black Child. And her passion is supporting Black and brown women to release the old, outdated stories that are keeping them stuck and to stand in their truth from a place of personal power. Abby's new creation is the Healing Heart Circle, which is what struck my attention. And obviously you've got facilitation training, so you'll tell us a little bit more about that. But yes. I just want to welcome you to the Therawake platform. It's an honor.
And it's beautiful to be here. It really is. So our paths got to cross. We are now aligned, and here we are. That's the beauty of communication, right?
It's the beauty of communication. Do you know what? I'm going to go off script a little bit because I've just, sometimes I get a little awakening. Yeah. Therawake, and I think, oh, did you used to do oils? Did you used to sell oils?
Yes.
Abby, that's how I know you, love. I've ordered oils off you. I can tell you where we met.
Yeah,
we met many years ago, and you were doing a series for I can't remember what it was called. I think it was Noir, and they help Black women.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that was probably about 8 years ago.
That was a long time ago. Yes. Yes. I thought, hold on, the name. You did some amazing oil. Those oils lasted me for years.
I did.
So I was thank you for that.
Yeah, I was doing doTERRA oils then.
That's right.
And I still use them now, absolutely. And now I go and I source my own oils all over Africa. Yeah. Which I haven't mentioned because I was trying to, otherwise it just goes on forever, Judy. But I fly to Africa solo. I find the people, the distillers, maybe sometimes the semi-nomadic people who are the true keepers of the knowledge of the oils and how they use them ancestrally and anciently. And I find them and I speak and I go and that's what I do as well. And I love it.
Abby, we're connected, right? You've been doing this healing work for some time.
Yes.
And where do we start? Because we've already started with the oils, but I'm mindful that we haven't spoken about your book because maybe that's what got you seen. So your book, which is
Becoming Visible, is the name of the book.
Becoming Visible. Okay. So tell me a little bit about that book.
So this book is really, it's a memoir about my life. So I was a child that was born of Nigerian heritage, and my parents put me into foster care, and it was a phenomena back in the sort of, I guess, the early 60s, right up until the early 2000s, but very much in the early 60s, when our parents came, not as economic immigrants, they came to study. So my mother was studying nursing, my father was studying to be a lawyer. They had no childcare because, the extended family, well, there was nobody here to do that. So what they did, there was a magazine called Nursery World, And in the back of the magazine, they put little adverts: West African child looking for private nanny, West African girl or boy, whatever the age was, wanting to be fostered by a private nanny. Now, all of these people were outside of London, so they were all white. Not all. The ones that I came into contact with were white working class families.
Sure.
And so that's where the beginnings of that started. And, when we were kind of doing the research, we found that there was around 70,000 of us that had been fostered to white working class families through this duration of time. Yeah. And so I never used to speak to people about this, Judy. I was too embarrassed. I was ashamed, and I felt guilty that I didn't speak my language. I didn't know my heritage. I didn't really understand where I came from. So for years, I never shared this with anybody. And there came a point when, probably only around 10 years ago, when I started telling people that I'd actually been privately fostered, and getting some of the like, oh, wow, really? And also some of the, I'd have never known, because I would have just not told anybody. And I think it was from that time, around 10 years ago, that I was really on my healing journey. I haven't got enough time to go into the detail, but please, if you get a chance to buy the book, I kind of talk about how I reconnected with my birth mother after 25 years. I had to go and find her in Sierra Leone. Long story, but won't go into it here. And so,
was that all in the book? Is that literally
yes,
your memoir?
It's my memoir from being 5 weeks old in white foster care, never living with my birth parents. I was always in foster care until I left. And so, my earliest memories back then, when I was probably around 4.5 years old, getting on the bus with my foster mum, who I called mum, was of this old elderly white couple wiping the seat, and me hearing that, coloured people are dirty, so you've got to wipe the seat clean before you can sit down. So in a 4-year-old's mind, there's no distinction. So I took this to be truth. So I always saw literally that I was dirty. I would try and scrub the colour of my skin away. Obviously, it wouldn't come away. So all of those things over those years, growing up in that kind of, those were very racist times. They were ignorant times. People didn't know. People didn't understand. And what I do want to do is I just want to add a little caveat here, in that our parents, my mother and father were like 19 and 22 when they came here. They were very young themselves.
Very young.
And in their minds, what they would have seen in Nigeria in the 60s and in the early 70s were the colonial white era, where the civil servants were very middle class and upper class. They would have had no knowledge that there were different classes in the UK. So in their minds, they're thinking, we're giving our children the best opportunity of education. That was the key. Obviously, from that, being disconnected from your community, disconnected from your language, disconnected from your food, all of those things, and being the only black girl kind of in your town, causes so many other issues of identity, of not belonging, of self-acceptance, of self-belief. And so the book is really about my journey from where I started, not loving myself, not wanting to be this person, why, not understanding why my skin was black and everybody else around me was white, and why they'd constantly try and wipe my skin to see if it was clean underneath. I didn't understand any of that. So it wasn't until I got much older that I had such a longing, and this was really when I had my children, to re-meet with my birth mother. I had so many questions, and I was angry. And
how old were you at this point when you met your birth mother?
She was in my life when I was really young, but I don't remember her. I just remember her maybe at the age of 7, when she said that she bought me a lovely pink watch with a gold face, and she was moving away to Canada. She'd remarried, my mother and father, but she'd remarried, she was moving to Canada. And I thought, okay, well, I don't know you anyway, so, that's fine. And then I was 40 when I re-met my birth mother. Yeah. So many, many years had passed.
Many years, 4 whole decades have gone by. So
And so
your parents, your kind of, what was your attachment to? Who were your parents in your mind? Who were your parents?
my foster mum, because
Yeah.
like, there was never, her husband was never around. It was just my foster mum, who was very hardworking. And, you know, she had there was always 4 or 5 foster children. And it was very common, even across the road from us, there was 4 or 5 Nigerian foster children. And so that's who I call mum. That's the only person I ever knew as mum. You know, now I have a relationship with my birth mother. It's not a mother-daughter relationship. I don't hide that. I didn't know her, you know,
There's no
for all
attachment.
of those years. There was no
earlier attachment. Yeah.
No earlier attachment. So I had to work through a lot of healing.
Yeah.
And, you know, really, once I sort of undid the emotions, it was like a tsunami. Like, I couldn't put the lid back on it. And I think that's why I was afraid for so long, because I knew once I started to undo and become more visible, because I was happy to be invisible, because if I wasn't seen, I didn't have to deal with stuff, and I could keep people at bay from asking me too much about my life, you know.
Yes.
So I'd hold back, I'd stand back, I'd hide behind the mask. You would come in and you would think, oh my God, I know Abby so well. You wouldn't, because once you got to a certain stage, Judy, bam, you were not getting in any further.
Right. You learn that to protect yourself from very young.
Was protection. Absolutely. Yeah. It was my mechanism from being young, from all of the things that foster care brought up. It was my way to feel safe and protected. And so that's the book. So the book about, you know, becoming visible is really about me leaning into Abby and starting to ask questions about who am I? Where do I come from? What are my roots? I remember the first time I went to Nigeria, I was scared at first because I hadn't been around so many Black people. And the stories that I'd heard from my foster family, because
about
they were
Black people,
were, you're going to be in the jungle, there's going to be lions, there's going to be monkeys trying to jump on your head. That's all I'd ever heard, because that's what they knew. So I had this
That's what they thought they knew.
That's what they thought they knew. Yes, thank you. That's what they'd seen on a program that used to be on the TV called Tarzan. That was their barometer back then. So from that space, when I remember breathing and looking around me and like crying, because it was like, all these people look like me. Oh my God, this is like, wow. Like, it was just such an overwhelming moment for me. And then when I went back to my home village to meet my family, to see people that look like me and call my name, I was just in floods and floods of tears. I was home for the first time in my life. I felt like I belonged. Even though I didn't speak the language, I felt like I belonged. And I really think that was many, many years ago. I still hadn't dealt with a lot, but I'd say that was probably the opening to knowing that there was more to me than I'd ever imagined at that time.
Wow. So many places I can go with this. And I just want to ask, how are you feeling in yourself now? Because you've probably said this over and over again, but I have to check in, because this is parts of your story. And as you keep telling it, there'll be different facets that start to emerge.
Absolutely. Yeah. But we're good. Yeah. It's
good. Okay.
My story. It's the book Becoming Visible is this is the book here.
Yeah, we'll link it. We'll definitely link it in the comments. Is that available on Amazon?
Yes, it is. It's available on Amazon. It's available on my website. And it's a really transparent book. And that's why it took me so long to write it. Because I had to, Judy, I had to be ready to do the work. And whilst I've been doing the work, and I continue to do my own healing work, writing this book, dart in the heart. Yeah. Like sometimes it was just, I had to put it down.
Sure.
I had to go back to do the healing, and then I had to pick up the pen again, you know? So it was a big part of my healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
There was a part of me that didn't want the world to know all of me, because once my vulnerabilities and all of that was out there, I was out there. But in the bigger scheme of things, Judy, in the wider world that we live in, this book I believed and felt was so important for other children who had not just been privately fostered, but felt like they didn't belong, felt that there was an issue with their identity, felt that there was an issue with their self-acceptance. It's so huge that I just said, you know what, Abby, just tell all of your truth in this book, because it's going to help so many more people, and it's so much bigger than me. Even though it's my story, I know it resonates with many, many other people.
Abby, where did you get the strength, or where did you get that awakening to give you that strength to tell your story, or even to go on this healing journey?
I am a believer that my father, my birth father, died. I remember him, but he died when I was 10. And the challenge was that my foster mum, in her caring for me, didn't allow me to go to his funeral because she thought I'd be too distraught. So I never really had closure with my father. But I always felt, as one of my ancestors, that my father's been with me on this journey. And so part of my strength, part of the overcoming, and part of me being able to tell this story was knowing that part of him was with me. And also, I just believe that the more I started to heal myself, the more I started to speak about snippets of my private fostering experience, the more, Judy, people were reaching out to me on email, going, oh my God, I just heard you speak about it. I've never spoken about it before. You're the first person I've heard. Do you think we could meet? And I would go and meet people all over the country, all over, and they would talk to me about their experience for the first time. And it was those experiences, I think, that helped me get the experience, gain the courage, I will say, and really question, do I have the resilience to write this book? And I did, and I have.
Awesome. And we'll come back to you, but we have to give thanks to Andy, the director of the Channel 5 documentary, because what he opened up, just to even have that passion to open that dialogue up, that education, that information. I know for me, in my private practice, it opened up a vortex. It's almost like what you said about your book. When you started to talk to people about your life, then people might go, can I just have a word? Because they're still holding that shame, but they're kind of like, okay, this is big for me. And I'm so glad that you've said my story. And there's been so many disclosures of people just opening up and sharing that narrative, that burden that they've been holding for many years about their identity, their guilt, having a Nigerian name or a Ghanaian name and not being able to have any connection with it, and people's expectations that, oh, that's a Nigerian name, you must know the food, the culture, the language, the pressure that comes with that.
Absolutely. And I think you've raised some really valid points there. And one of the things that I know many of us that have had this private fostering experience felt that we didn't want to be around Nigerian people, because the minute you say your name, there is an expectation that you know the language, and so they start to speak in Yoruba or Hausa or Igbo, whatever it is, and you're looking blank. And then, because it's part of the culture, they're almost scolding you for not understanding. Why didn't your parents teach you the language? And you don't always want to be in public places to tell everybody, well, I was involved. You don't want to go down, you don't want to go down that route. So for me personally, for a lot of the time, I shied away from Nigerians because it always came with a judgment, and the judgment always, I felt internally, it wasn't them, it was how I felt. I always felt less than. So rather than me feeling that less than or feeling that small round the table, I would rather not say it at all. But there came an opening when I was at a dinner party, and I was very, very nervous because it was a mixture of some Caucasian friends of mine and Nigerians and a couple of Ghanaian people as well. And I knew the question was going to come up. Someone was going to say to me, what's your full name? What's your full name? Because I abbreviate to Abby. And so when I said my full name, Abimbola, they were like, oh, you're Nigerian. And I said, yes. And so, yeah, you Yoruba, da, 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 da. I said, I don't speak my language. And so I said, but what I am going to share with you is that I was a child that was privately fostered. And I don't know whether any of your children were put into private foster care. But if they were, you'll probably be aware that when you're privately fostered, you're away from your family, you're away from your food, you don't learn the language because you are in a totally white area and it just doesn't exist there. So what I'm really interested in now is finding out from people if they privately fostered their children to a nanny. The whole energy switched. Like I really felt like I was in my power. I did it very diplomatically and very politely. But what I was saying was, I can either choose to feel like I'm less than, or I can choose to be in my power and explain in a way as to why I don't, and ask you the question, were your children nannied outside of London?
Yeah.
And it was a very different conversation. And from that, one lady who said, 45 years later, and my mother is dead, she had a picture of this white lady on the top of her dressing table, but none of us ever felt we could ask who it was. And my father, for the first time, she called me the next day, in 45 years, told you that was my mother's nanny.
Wow.
And so, Judy,
Pandora's box gets opened up, right? Yeah. And, the story that you tell, and I'm sure you've told it many times before, it's such a gateway. And I feel like 2024 is the year of truth. Yeah, and I feel like, something's happening where people that are holding shame that doesn't belong to them, that comes from a lineage, or, life isn't necessarily as clear cut as society presents it to be. Things happen.
Absolutely.
And the problem is, with all of this mental health focus, the more we dig and scratch the surface, we realize, hold on a minute, this is more complex than I thought. In fact, this may not even be my stuff.
Yes.
And what you've done in, we're going to talk about your healing circle, because that's what I was drawn to in the documentary. Obviously, all the narratives, but I just found your work, your facilitation in that healing circle. So I'm quite interested in, the history of it and how the participants, how they dealt with it, because it's such a powerful intervention tool. And it's ancestral. And it was very sensitive. The way that you did it was so delicate, so sensitive, but yet direct. It was beautiful to watch them just awaken, almost like sleeping babies, and you're just gently tapping them and they're waking up and they're so vulnerable, and you held that space. I think it was you and another co-facilitator, but you both held
that's space. Right. Yes.
So tell me a little bit about these healing circles, for us that maybe you've never heard of it before.
Yeah, so the healing heart circles were really born. I was doing them prior to the documentary that was created by Andy Mundy, the brilliant Andy Mundy Castle. But when I held space for the 9 incredible participants in the documentary, and I came away, and it probably wasn't until a year later, I would say, that once the documentary had come out and there was so much feedback, that I really had this very clear vision, Judy, of me creating these healing heart circles for us as a people. And what also came to me is, ancestrally, everything that we did, in our lineage was always around circle. We as women, we would meet around circle. We would talk in circle. The men would meet separately in circle. They would talk and they would discuss what was happening in their lives, what was happening at home, in and around circle, because the power and the frequency of energy that you hold in a circle, no beginning, no end, is just incredible. And so what I wanted to do is I see us as the modern day griots, the modern day storytellers. Like, we tell the most incredible stories. I feel it's in our DNA. It's always been there. It's just unlocking this, what I call silent power that we have within, because when we start to vocalize, whether it's a story, whether it's poetry, we're consumed by the story. We're in it.
Yes.
And so it's really bringing that alive. And what I wanted to do is, rather than me just creating circles that people come to, which I love to do, I wanted the message to not just ripple out, I want it to tsunami out. Like, I want this global. And I want us here, America, Canada, Africa, younger girls, women, older women, holding circle and hearing the stories of what is going on with us from the intuitive inside of us.
Yes.
And being in a space where we feel heard, held, and healed, just by sharing the words that are coming out of our mouth. And so I created this Healing Heart Circle facilitation training program for, originally it was for Black and brown women. And then I thought, no, I want to open this up to the men. Like, we are all on this healing journey.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a therapist. It's wonderful if you are, but if you're coming from a place of heart and you know that you can sit and, I teach you the pillars, I teach you the fundamentals of how to really hold powerful circles, and you bring your own essence to it, it is so powerful. And maybe all for the price of a yoga or a meditation class. You might not even decide you want to charge, because you may just do it with your family. I mean,
breakthroughs happen in circles.
Absolutely, Judy.
Breaking of chains, right?
Yes. Breaking of chains that were never ours, were never really ours to hold, but we've held on to them, and it's almost like we've allowed ourselves through the social narrative to stay in our own man-made, woman-made chains. And so this is about, even without you subconsciously realizing, when when we're rooted in circle, what I love, there's no hierarchy. We're all guardians of the circle. We all come in that guardianship space to hold the circle, to hold the energy, to hold each other, to understand what it feels like to be held and heard. And that's really powerful. And that's all part of becoming visible in the life that we live in now. And then the ripple effect is allowing all of our community to become visible, knowing that they will be heard and healed, and still able to stand in their own personal power from that space.
That is, I'm just trying to visualize that, because Black people in the UK, we have the most cases of acute mental health disorders.
Yeah.
There is a real internal conflict.
Yeah.
An internal identity crisis, and having to navigate racism, and having to feel less than in circles, and feeling like you're constantly a visitor or a guest, but never actually having any ownership. So of course that's going to cause some fragmentation. And when you talk about, being heard, being held, being healed, I can't help but think about that 7-year-old child or that 4-year-old child that doesn't quite feel held, even though their foster carers are trying the best that they can. Hats off to foster carers, adoptive parents. Amazing. You're sacrificing everything for this child who has come from potentially trauma and their own little personalities, and you're kind of having to deal with the end of that. But they actually may not feel heard, understood, held, in terms of that knowing held. You said when you went to Nigeria and you actually felt like you're home, there was just something about it. You felt that, okay, I'm home now.
Yeah.
and then that healing. And a lot of us are walking around with wounds, walking wounded,
Walking
unhealed.
wounded. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, Judy, through the work that you do every day, that the wounds show up in every single facet of your life. You, the carrier of the wounds, may not be aware of that, but the energy that you're portraying, that you're broadcasting, it shows up all the time. And those hurts and those wounds are things that can stop us from really becoming the best version of ourselves, because we don't know. We don't, it's a blind spot for us. We can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
But when somebody else might open that up and mirror that back to you, if you're not doing the work, then the defense comes in and you shut down.
Of course. And the defense is the protection of the heart.
The defense is the protection of the heart. Absolutely. 100%.
But it's been coined as being aggressive or angry, but actually it's protecting. I need to protect
the heart. Yes, I need to feel safe and protected, and that's the place you go back to.
Absolutely. Can I ask then, Abby, if somebody's listening now and the story is very much their story and they're feeling this and they may be hearing different facets of this for the very first time and it's raw, what gems would you tell them, or what gems would you give them to encourage them to heal, or to at least take a first step into that healing journey?
Yeah, I think ground yourself, and what I mean by that is take some time to be with your thoughts in a space. If you're somebody that loves to walk in nature, if you're somebody that, you know, loves music, whatever allows you to feel safe and protected, go to that space. Go to that place first and foremost. And then it's really just allowing yourself gradually to think back over some of those thoughts that you've pushed away for a very long time and see what comes up for you first and see how you feel about it. And if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you know the tears are going to come, what I would always say is release the tears. Tears are a wonderful way to release these trapped emotions that have been going on in the body for a very long time. You may want to reach out to somebody like yourself, you know, a therapist that can really help you, not from a place of family, but really help you understand the emotions that you're going through right now. You may want to come to a retreat. That's the reason why I created retreats really in the first place, the healing retreat. I call them Reconnect Sister Retreats because it is all about reconnecting back to self and understanding who you are and who you are becoming now. So I would say that now that it's, you know, the lid is off, there are organizations like Barton, I know you're part of Barton as well, that you can go to.
Black, African and Asian Therapist Network.
So yes, indeed.
Little plug, www.barton.org. Very excellent organization, lifesavers.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're there. And what I would say is there's even, I think if you go onto Instagram, there's a White Nanny Black Child group. There's a White Nanny Black Child Facebook group that's been set up where lots of people watched the movie and said, I was fostered. Where do I go? Like, I don't know anyone else that was fostered. I was fostered in Yorkshire or Lincolnshire, or, you know. And so what the participants in the movie set up a WhatsApp group so people can actually plug into that and you maybe just talk a little bit about themselves and what they're doing. And what I would say is one of the things that I'm just birthing now, you're the first to hear it actually, Judy, so I'm showing it here, is I've actually been asked many times outside of the facilitation training, Abby, can you do healing heart stuff online? Because I can't get to London. I live in Yorkshire, I live in Huddersfield, and I was fostered and So now I am creating like a monthly healing heart online where we actually get to come together and start to have conversations. And so there's definitely, I would say, more support out there now than I feel that there's ever been.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's a family. It's a network, you know. Thank you. And I want to hear a bit more about your retreats. I know you've got one coming up this month, and I really want to plug that as much as possible on this platform.
Thank you.
But I couldn't help but think about, as you were speaking, the natural organic connections. You know, this work that we do, it's not in isolation. You know, people might see Therawake and they think, oh, it's just one person. It absolutely is not. Those burdens, those heavy shopping, you know, the trolleys that your granny would drag, and then when you see them, they're like the nanny, the literally that nanny caricature. No, those days are over. We don't need to be burdening ourselves anymore. We can actually speak up, speak out, ask for help, gain a community, ask for a family. Our families don't have to be our birth family.
Absolutely.
We have angels around us all the time. We just have to access them. So I'm really mindful, and you're a phenomenal woman, Abby. Just hearing your backstory and your resilience, your strength, but also your vulnerability. You know, your vulnerability is your strength.
Yes. And you're mirroring my words, really. And I think I say that a lot, that, you know, it's in my vulnerability that I've really been able to connect with so many more people. Because I know that my truth, you know, the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment of a life which is all part of my rich tapestry now, but for a long time, I didn't want it to be part of me, you know, but it comes with that almost like a bit of a permission slip, you know, and I think with that vulnerability, you're right. It's this, you know, the biggest strength that we have is us being able to be vulnerable and really talk our truth, because without that, you're holding on, you're keeping the mask on, you're keeping this, you know, the strong Black woman, which it doesn't take away from us at all. But in that strength, it's the vulnerability that really is the connecting force in terms of who we are, who we're becoming, who we're being, and the heart work that all of us are doing in these spaces.
And the forgiveness. And the forgiveness, you know. Look, we can speak the whole time, but listen, I've gone over because normally we have half an hour for our Therawake guests, but I could not interrupt you because your story is so powerful. So thank you for that. You know, I've taken it with a lot of respect and honor, and I'm sure the listeners will as well. But tell me about this retreat that's coming up. Give us the date. Tell us what it's about, how long it lasts for. Is it an overnight thing? Is it online?
Yeah, so this retreat, the next retreat that's coming up is actually in April. So it's April the 26th to 29th. I did on one day, and it's a 3-night retreat. And it's down in Benedict. 2024, yeah. Thank you. Down in Benedict, Kent, beautiful part of the world. And I hire the whole part of that estate, so we are not disturbed. There'll be a maximum of about 12 of us. I'm not one to do big retreat groups. And what we get to do is we really get to come together, like you said, as a family. Women will not know each other, and within the space of half an hour, you'll know, Judy, if you've been on a retreat. It's like, oh my God, I feel like I've known you forever. So we bring this incredible energy. And what we really get to do is we get to be in commune together in divine union and really share our stories in terms of where we are. Share our stories in terms of what things are really keeping us up at night right now, and also share some of those guilt-ridden stories that have never been shared before. And when you're in that safe space on retreat, so many things come up. You tell yourself before you get to the retreat, right, I'm not going to talk about that because I don't want to be judged. But when you get into the space and you get into the vulnerability, it's just beautiful. We dance, we laugh, we have amazing food, we're out grounding in the greenery, we go on walks, we have sound baths, crystals. I mean, it is beautiful. And I would love for you to join us.
Do you know what? You've invited me to 2, and I think both of those times I've been away.
You've been away.
I've been out the country, but yeah, definitely. It's on my list. I really would like to honor that and be available for one of your healing heart circles at the minimum. Most definitely, for sure. So that's an amazing amount of gems. You've given so many gems. You haven't just given 1 or 2. You've given quite a bit. But just before we close, what's next for Abby Osho?
So So I go to Ghana in about 10 days' time. My African retreat this year is in Ghana. It's a 10-night reconnect deep dive sister retreat. So we really get to do some deep work out there, transformational work. So I'm just going to pull all of the components together for that. Another retreat in Turkey this year, a short one, a 4-night. This is just... I met these people called the Afro Turks. I know we're going over now. So that's another.
No, it's good. I love it. I love your life right now.
And what happened was I came back from Turkey. I was on an intense coaching 4-day event. And these Afro Turk people popped up on my phone. I was like, who are these people? And anyway, I was trying to connect. 6 months later, I got an email back from a lady called Beyhan Torkolu. And so I was doing Google Translate into Turkish, and she was Google translating into English for about 4 months. And then I went to meet her. I meant to meet them last year in Izmir. And they are, some of them are still very dark, black. We believe their roots came from the Ottoman Empire, so via Tanzania, all the way down through Cyprus, through Greece, through Crete, over to what was then the brand new Turkey. And so their experience is that people from Turkey do not believe they're Turkish. They don't believe they're Turkish. They think they're from Saudi or from somewhere else. So they decided that they wanted to call themselves the Afro Turks and find out about their own history because they didn't know their history. So I was speaking with them and, I said, look, I want to do a short retreat where I'm going to have, it's as small as like 7. I think there's 7 places in this beautiful place that I found in Ayvalık. Up in the mountains. And I said, I'd love for you to come and just tell us about yourselves, your history, how comes you're here, what you've traced it back to be. And so that's going to be part of our time that we have there. Yeah.
You're doing some work. You've clearly been downloaded to do this work in this human existence. So, keep doing what you're doing, keep being guided. And thank you for sharing so much of you today. Like I said, we'll link your book in the comments. We wish you well.
Thank you so much. Can I give you my website? If I give you my
of course.
My website and so www.soulmelanin.com. You can see. Please come and check out my website if you want to hear more about what I'm doing. And then my socials on Instagram, I'm Abby, ABI_soulmelanin. And I'm Soul Melanin Abby Osho on Facebook. And LinkedIn, I'm Abby Osho. So there you have it.
We'll find you.
Thank you,
we'll find all the links on your website where to find you.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, well, listen, Therawake listeners, thank you very much. You've been in for a treat. You've had a treat. You've had the whole of Abby Osho. So you can visit her website at www.soulmelanin.com if you'd like to, know a little bit more, or if you'd like to go on one of the retreats, or if you just want to know a little bit more about what she does, because she does so much. Thank you so much for listening today. And until the next time, bye for now.